In 1922, George Gurdjieff discovered something that left him sleepless for 3 days, walking through the house like a man possessed. He had discovered that you are being controlled by invisible forces at this very moment, and you have no idea. But what Gurdjieff discovered about these forces goes beyond any science fiction or conspiracy theory you've ever heard. These forces do not come from governments, corporations, or aliens. They emerge from something much closer. Something that is literally breathing right next to you at this moment. And you feed them unconsciously every time you feel anger, fear, desire, or sadness. In the next 45 minutes, you will discover truths that Gurdjieff revealed only to his closest students. Why you have never had a truly free decision in your entire life. The secret method that makes you immune to psychic manipulation. How some of Gurdjieff's students developed the ability to influence entire crowds. And the discovery that proved free will is an illusion for 99.9% of humanity. And prepare yourself psychologically, because when Gurdjieff first tested these discoveries, he managed to make a person completely change their personality in less than 10 minutes, with no hypnosis, no drugs, without the person even realizing what was happening. And when they returned to normal, they couldn't remember the previous 10 minutes. Gurdjieff's obsession with invisible forces began when he was young, when he noticed something that would disturb any normal person. He noticed that emotions spread through crowds following precise mathematical patterns. One person would get annoyed in a corner of the market. In exactly 3 minutes and 20 seconds, someone 50 meters away would explode in anger for no apparent reason. And this always happened. Like clockwork. Like a machine. It was then that Gurdjieff conducted the experiment that changed his understanding of human nature forever. He gathered 12 people in a circle, each in an exact position he had calculated. He said it was a group meditation exercise. But in reality, he was testing whether he could artificially create what he had observed in the markets. In 15 minutes, all 12 people were breathing at the same rhythm, making the same subtle gestures, having almost identical thoughts. But when Gurdjieff asked each one what they had felt, they all swore it had been a totally spontaneous and individual experience. None had any idea that they had been controlled like a puppet. Gurdjieff spent the next 10 years mapping what he discovered to be 3 invisible laws that govern human behavior. The first he called the law of automatic contamination. It works like this. Your nervous system is like an ultra-sensitive radio that automatically picks up the dominant emotional state of any environment. You enter a hospital, and you immediately feel anxiety without knowing why. You enter a party, and you artificially become animated even if you were depressed. You enter a church, and you feel a reverence that isn't yours. Gurdjieff discovered that this happens in exactly 90 seconds. And here's the terrifying part. You never realize when this happens. You genuinely believe the feelings are your own. The second law is even more disturbing. Gurdjieff called it viral emotional transmission. Every intense negative emotion, anger, fear, despair, lust, automatically seeks to reproduce itself in nearby people. Like a biological virus, but invisible. Gurdjieff measured this. A person in an intense negative emotional state can infect up to 30 people within a 15-meter radius in less than 10 minutes. And those 30 people will each infect another 30, creating invisible emotional epidemics that spread through entire cities. But it was the third law that almost made Gurdjieff give up his experiments. It revealed something about human nature that deeply shook him. He discovered that there is a programmed collective consciousness that operates like an invisible supercomputer, injecting thoughts, desires, and decisions directly into people's minds. Gurdjieff wrote in his diary, "I discovered that the average human being has never had a thought of their own. They are a biological terminal running software they did not write." And the discovery that kept him sleepless for a week, the programming doesn't come from the past. It comes from the future. To prove his theories, Gurdjieff created experiments that today would be considered completely illegal and unethical. He recruited volunteers and subjected them to different types of invisible influence. In the first experiment, he placed an extremely angry person in one room and calm people in adjacent rooms separated by walls. In 20 minutes, all the people in the next rooms were inexplicably irritated, aggressive, and fighting among themselves for no reason. They didn't know the angry person existed. But the result that most shocked Gurdjieff was when he inverted the experiment. He placed a person in deep meditation, radiating love and compassion, in the center. In 30 minutes, people within a 100-meter radius, on the street, in neighboring buildings, reported spontaneous feelings of happiness and peace. Then Gurdjieff did something that haunted him for the rest of his life. He decided to test if he could control not just emotions but specific decisions. He positioned himself strategically at a train station and began to radiate the very specific intention: buy a ticket to Paris. In 2 hours, 17 people who had no plans to travel bought tickets to Paris. None of them realized they had been mentally controlled. That night, Gurdjieff wrote what he considered the most terrifying discovery of his life. If I can control people's decisions without them noticing, it means others can too. This means that perhaps all our desires, ambitions, and choices are implanted by someone or something. And then he asked the question that terrified him: if free will is an illusion, who or what is really in control? After discovering how vulnerable he was to invisible influences, Gurdjieff became obsessed with developing defenses. The first method he called 7-layer magnetic breathing, a technique that literally creates an invisible energetic shield. It works like this: you breathe following a specific mathematical pattern for exactly 7 minutes. Gurdjieff tested this hundreds of times. People trying to influence him emotionally simply failed. The second method was even more powerful. Gurdjieff called it psychic radar, the ability to detect when someone is trying to influence you before the influence happens. With practice, you feel when someone is radiating anger toward you before you even see the person. But the most incredible thing, you begin to detect when your own emotions and thoughts are not yours, but have been implanted by external influences. But it was the third method that Gurdjieff considered his masterpiece. Instead of just defending against negative influences, he learned to transform them into energy for his evolution. He called this psychic jujitsu, using the force of the energetic attack to strengthen himself. The result: the more people tried to affect him negatively, the stronger and more conscious he became. And he discovered something even more surprising. When you master this technique, you automatically begin to raise the energetic level of all the people around you. You become a walking frequency elevator. After mastering these methods, Gurdjieff decided to conduct the most ambitious experiment of his life. He wanted to discover the original source of invisible forces, where they really came from, who or what controlled them. On the 39th day, something happened that completely changed his understanding of reality. Gurdjieff described the experience like this: suddenly I could see the invisible architecture of the cosmos. I saw that the forces that influence humans are part of a much larger system. But the discovery that most shocked him was realizing that the most powerful influences came from the future. Evolved versions of human consciousness trying to guide humanity today. It was then that Gurdjieff understood the real purpose of invisible forces. They don't exist to control or manipulate. They are the system through which universal consciousness tests each human being's ability to awaken to their true nature. People who succumb to influences remain dormant. Those who learn to transform them evolve to a higher level of consciousness. And those who completely master these forces become conscious transmitters, capable of elevating all of humanity through their simple presence. If Gurdjieff was disturbed by the invisible forces of his time, imagine what he would think of the modern world. Today we live in a soup of invisible influences thousands of times more intense. Algorithms programming our desires. Electromagnetic frequencies altering our states. Constant subliminal programming through media. The difference is that today these influences are consciously and deliberately designed by corporations, governments, and artificial intelligence systems. The average human being today is influenced by invisible forces every 3.2 seconds. But Gurdjieff's methods are even more relevant today. They can be adapted to create total immunity against modern digital and psychological manipulation. Gurdjieff also developed an emergency protocol for situations of extreme influence. 3 specific breaths that create instant protection. A subtle movement of the hands that breaks any attempt at manipulation. A body posture that makes you energetically invisible to negative influences. It takes only 30 seconds to perform and creates a shield that lasts up to 4 hours. But he warned, these methods should only be used for personal protection and evolution. Gurdjieff taught these more advanced methods only to an intimate circle of students who swore never to reveal them publicly. P.D. Ouspensky wrote in private letters, "When Gurdjieff demonstrated complete control over invisible forces, I witnessed something that challenged everything I believed about the limits of human consciousness. Catherine Mansfield, in her last days of life at the Prior, wrote in her diary something that summarizes Gurdjieff's entire discovery about invisible forces. Gurdjieff showed me that we spend our whole lives being pushed by invisible winds, thinking we chose our direction. Only when I learned to see these winds could I truly choose whether to dance with them or fly above them. And now the question Gurdjieff left for each of us: if you could see all the invisible forces influencing you at this very moment, the corporate, the social, the emotional, the digital, the cosmic, what would you choose to do with that vision? Would you use this knowledge to defend yourself and live in isolation? Or to become a conscious force of elevation for all of humanity? Because the methods Gurdjieff discovered are not just historical. They are timeless technologies of transformation that are available to you now. Gurdjieff's final discovery about invisible forces revealed the most liberating truth of all. The invisible forces that seem to control us are actually fragments of our own higher consciousness trying to awaken us. When you master these forces, you don't become immune to the world. You become the type of person who automatically elevates the energetic level of any environment you enter. If these revelations have awakened something in you, it is no coincidence. You are ready for the next level. To become aware of the forces that have shaped your life until now.